In the NHL, there are some massive egos, whether it's the star players, the coaching staff, the billionaire owners, especially the billionaire owners, because when you're dealing with millions of dollars in revenue, stars who sell tickets, careers, egos, and pride can lead to some very messy situations, as we have seen monumental clashes between stars and their teams, which ended in complete and utter disaster. Also, we are so close to 60k and I will not stop asking until we get there. Yes, you. Make sure to press subscribe for your weekly dose of hockey content. Jack Eichel. After being one of the most prolific NCAA prospects in NHL history, putting up an astonishing 71 points in 40 games in his draft year, on top of a great World Juniors and Men's World Championships, Eichel was poised to be the next franchise player in the NHL, and would have hands down been a first overall pick if it wasn't anybody but Connor McDavid, who also shared the same draft year. I mean, Eichel was so good, I even saw narratives that he could compete for that number one spot. However, even though Eichel and McDavid were lottery picks, they in fact lost the lottery, as the Edmonton Oilers and the Buffalo Sabres just so happened to be the number one and number two spots. And after being drafted second overall, Jack Eichel would develop into Buffalo's franchise player. He would sign a monster 8-year, $80 million contract. He would be given captaincy of the team, on top of developing into one of the brightest young stars in the league, and was on pace for a 95-point season in 2020 before he got injured. Eichel was legit, especially when you consider the players in his team he had around him. And that's the thing. Throughout Eichel's entire tenure with the team, Buffalo has been a complete dumpster fire. Whether it's making some of the worst trades of the last decade, signing some of the worst contracts of the last decade, or having to literally clean house and fire everyone in the organization. Really? Everyone? To put it simply, Buffalo has been nothing but a shit show, as Eichel hasn't even been able to sniff the playoffs in his entire career. Not only that, they are arguably farther away today than they were in 2015 when they drafted Eichel, as this offseason they would do another teardown by trading away Sam Reinhart and unloading Ristolainen. Now they would draft Owen Power first overall, but he won't even be in the NHL until 2023, so maybe playoffs in like 2025, 2026, or 10 plus years after Eichel's draft date. And with that, with all the losses and just incompetence for management, Jack Eichel, who was already upset with the Sabres' direction, would have a season-ending neck injury. And to sum up this messy debacle, Jack Eichel wants to try a new surgery. And it's not new, to clarify, it just hasn't been done on a hockey player. However, many of the top surgeons have okayed this procedure, as it can benefit him far more than the traditional surgery for the rest of his hockey career and in his life. However, the Sabres' billionaire management are not comfortable with the new surgery, and they would literally tell Jack, no, they don't want him to do it. They want him to do the traditional surgery. And at this point, both sides' egos are so pumped up, I don't even think they know what is what at this point. Because you know how I know it's about ego at this point and just pure pettiness? Is the fact that if they went with the surgery Jack Eichel wants, and just say worst case scenario it fails, he can just instantly get the surgery that Buffalo wants anyways, so it literally does not matter. But Buffalo at this point is so petty, they just won't let him. And I've heard people go, Jack, you're getting paid, just do the surgery. But no, I don't like that. He has seen experts that have recommended him the surgery, which can benefit his career longevity. So why is Buffalo so against this? One word: ego. And because of this, Jack Eichel is on the trade block, as we all know, all the trade rumors, the fake trade rumors, but the Buffalo Sabres management is not happy with the trade value they're getting back. But a lot of this has to do with the surgery uncertainty. And if they just approved the surgery Eichel wanted months ago, Eichel and the Sabres, everyone would already know the outcome, and so they could just make the trade seamlessly by now. It just doesn't make any sense, because instead we have a massive ego not allowing his captain and franchise player to get the surgery he wants. Just absurd. And because of this, Eichel would even fire his last agent and hire Pat Brisson, who's one of the most successful ruthless agents in the game, with over $1 billion in contracts, so we'll see how that goes. And Eichel would even randomly make a Twitter account just to tweet this emoji, which sums it up perfectly: frustration. But What do you guys think? Is Buffalo just proving that they are an even bigger dumpster fire? Or is Eichel in the wrong? Comment down below. Michael Peca, after being drafted in the second round by the Vancouver Canucks and being involved in a massive blockbuster deal that sent Alexander McGillney to the Canucks, 1 year after being traded to Buffalo at the age of 22, Peca would be named captain of the Sabres. And during the 90s, being named captain this young was extremely rare, as Peca was an absolute warrior, a leader, a fan favorite, a phenomenal two-way player. In fact, Peca that season would also become one of the youngest players in NHL history to take home a Selke trophy for best defensive forward in the league, on top of consistently putting up 20-30 goal seasons. In 1999, Peca would lead the Sabres to the Stanley Cup Finals, but they would lose to Dallas. But with Peca leading the team, with his ability to shut down the top stars in the game, the Buffalo Sabres were a cup contending roster. Except, heading into the 2000-2001 season, Peca's contract had expired. And in a pre-salary cap era, Buffalo doing Buffalo things would lowball their captain and franchise player. And as a result, Peca was irate, to the point where he would sit out the entire 01-02 season in frustration. And guess what? Without Peca, the Buffalo Sabres would miss the playoffs entirely. Going from a top team in the league who just made it to the Stanley Cup Finals to lowballing their captain and missing the playoffs entirely because ownership would not pay their star player. And what makes it worse is this was in a time, again, where the salary cap didn't even exist. Was not making the playoffs for multiple years really worth it to save a few bucks? And well, after sitting out an entire season, the Sabres would trade Peca to the Islanders for Taylor Pyatt and Tim Connolly. But here's the kicker. That season, Peca would have rubbed having a career year for his offense, putting up 60 points, 25 goals, but not only that, he would win another Selke trophy and lead the Islanders to the playoffs after a 7-year drought. In the Sabres, they would go from a Stanley Cup contending team to missing the playoffs once again. Also, I didn't even mean to put back-to-back Buffalo players, but Buffalo, what are you doing? So, now that we've gone over management and ownership having egos beyond control, let's investigate a player. Dany Heatley, Mr. 50 in 07. After being drafted second overall in the 2000 NHL draft, the Rick DiPietro draft, Heatley would quickly assert himself as a star. He would take home the Calder, 41 goals in his second season, except things would go abruptly south, as Heatley was behind the wheel in a high-speed crash that resulted in the death of his teammate, Dan Snyder, rest in peace. And so after stepping away from the game for a while, the Ottawa Senators would make a blockbuster trade, acquiring Heater for Marian Hossa. And well, Heatley would develop into a bona fide superstar. 50 goals, 103 points in his first season, another 50-goal season in 07, 50 in 07 baby, and on a line with Daniel Alfredsson and Jason Spezza, they would form one of the best lines in the entire NHL. A line that would take them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, but Teemu Selanne and the Ducks would play spoiler. However, it didn't matter, as Dany Heatley would ink a monster 6-year, $45 million deal, which was massive back in 2008. But this is where things would come crashing down, as the Senators would fire their coach in Craig Hartsburg and replace him with rookie head coach Corey Clausen. And it would come out that Heatley did not like the new coach, stating he didn't like the system he was playing in, he wanted to play his game in a system he wanted on his own terms, which is absurd and extremely selfish in a game that is so team heavy. But I guess we should have saw this coming. He is Mr. 50 in 07, and he is not playing around. Because here's the sauce. In the 2007-2008 NHL season, Dany Heatley, playing under Hartsburg, was routinely playing up towards 25 minutes per game, which is pretty absurd for a non-defensive winger. However, the Senators were a terrible team for that stretch. And because of this terrible record, in the middle of the season once Hartsburg was fired and Clausen would come in, Heatley went from playing 25 minutes a game to routinely playing less than 20. But the Senators would drastically turn around the record and become a playoff winning team again. And this would piss off Heatley so much, he would demand a trade. And I mean, I'm not saying that Clausen was a good coach and that, he should have been there, but it just seems absurd for there to be a new rookie coach that doesn't directly apply to your playstyle. So you whine and complain and demand a trade. And so after one more season of Heater being frustrated he wasn't getting his way, he would be traded to San Jose. But here's the absurd part. Heatley would basically force his trade, saying he wouldn't play for the Senators right after receiving a $4 million bonus from the Sens. And if we know Eugene Melnyk, him spending millions on an egotistical star was not sitting well. Because after he was shipped off, the Senators ownership would sue Dany Heatley. On top of the Senators never being the same again without Heatley. And Heatley would play pretty well for a couple years in San Jose. He would get shipped off to the Minnesota Wild. And we would see one of the most drastic fall-offs in NHL history. As Heatley would go from a 40, 50 goal scorer to a 10 goal scorer and end up in the minors in what seemed like an instant.
Off-season guilty pleasure.
I don't know, fuck. Pretending I want to trade back to Ottawa.